Hey everyone, it's Mr. G, and if there's one good thing that's come out of this pandemic for me, it's that I've been reading more physical books. So, the other day, as I was reading this book, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool to know how long it takes me to read the entire thing? And every other book that I'm going to end up reading. So I went to Scratch and I created an app that allows me to track how long it takes me to read an entire book. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create that app. I'm going to show you what I did. And it's going to be a little bit different than my normal videos because I'm not going to do any live coding. I'm just going to do a code review and show you the sprites that I made and the algorithms that I wrote to solve that problem. So for this project, I envisioned myself sitting down to read a book, pressing the start button when I start reading and a stop button when I stop or when I finish, and that everything would be saved when I do just that. So I knew I needed at least three main features. The first one being capturing which book I was actually reading, the second one being a timer to keep track of how much time I've been reading, and the third feature being how to store the book and the amount of time that I spent reading it. I created all of these sprites using the built-in Paint editor in the Costumes tab. When someone first uses this program, they have to enter which book they're currently reading. So they could either start it by clicking on the green flag or by clicking the Choose Book sprite. When someone starts, I immediately initialize three variables: current book, currently reading, and reading time. So current book is going to be the variable that stores the book that I'm currently reading. Currently reading is whether or not I'm reading at the moment. So when I first start the project, I'm going to put false, and I'm going to change that to true when I actually do start reading. And you'll see how that comes in handy when I show you the timer. And reading time is how many seconds I've been reading. So the first thing I do is I ask the user what they're currently reading. And I keep asking them that same question if they answer none or if they give me a blank space as their answer. I also make sure that the length of their answer is greater than 2 characters. So they have to put at least 3 letters. If the user enters an acceptable book based on these conditions, I then set the current book variable equal to the answer. And the next thing I do in my conditional is that I check to see if the person has read the book before. So the way that I store my items in a list, my books and my reading times in the list, is every other item. So what I mean by that is that my first item is going to be the book, followed by the amount of time I've read that book for. Then the next item is going to be the book, followed by the amount of reading time I've spent on that book. So if the list already contains the book, then I set this total reading time variable to the amount of time that they've read it for. So all I do is I look at the next value inside of the list. This is kind of a hack that I had to do because Scratch doesn't let you put lists inside of lists. So I had to basically store books and reading times basically every other item. If the list doesn't contain the book, then I set the total reading time to 0 because that means that it's the first time this person is reading the book. The total reading time variable is what I'm going to use later on when I store the amount of time the person has read the book for. So that's basically going to do it for my Choose Book sprite. In it, I pretty much initialize all of my variables that I'm going to need. So next, let's look at what happens when someone clicks the Start Reading sprite. So when someone clicks on Start Reading, the first thing I do is I check to make sure that the current book doesn't equal none, because if it does, that means the person did not enter an appropriate book title. So I just say, you need to enter a book title first, and they can't do anything else. But if they entered an acceptable book title, then the next thing I do is I set currently reading to true, and then I start this repeat until block. And I'm going to keep doing this until currently reading equals false. And so inside of this block, I have my timer. So I wait 1 second, and then I change the reading time by 1. So that's going to increment reading time by 1 every second. So once I created this, I then realized that someone should be able to pause reading if they have to go to the bathroom or take a break or something. So let's look at the pause sprite. And all I do is I set currently reading to false. So if someone starts reading but they hit pause, then I just change the value of the variable currently reading to false and the timer will stop incrementing. When they're ready to keep reading, they can hit start reading. When someone's done reading the book, they can hit the done reading sprite and that immediately sets currently reading to false, so the timer stops. Then I change my total reading time by the reading time. So I take the amount of time that's been read and I add it to my total reading time. Then I set my reading time to 0 to reset it. And then this conditional adds the amount of time that I've read the book for inside of my list. So if the book already exists inside of the list, then I just replace the next item, which represents how much time I've read that book for. Otherwise, the book doesn't exist in the list, so we're just going to add it to the list. We're going to add the current book, and we're going to add the total reading time to the next item. After I did all this, I realized that I wanted to be able to reset my list anytime I wanted, so I created a reset all block, or a delete all books block. And all it does is ask the user if they're sure that they want to delete. And if the answer is yes or Y, representing yes, then I delete all of the items in this sprite. As soon as that happens, I reset all the variables to their appropriate values. So let me show you the project in action. I'm going to hit the green flag, and it's going to ask me what I'm currently reading. So I'm going to type in LOTR for Lord of the Rings. And then when I start reading, I just have to hit the start reading block, and you see the reading time start increasing. Right now, the total reading time is at 0 because I've never read a book before. Okay, so once enough time has passed, I'm going to hit pause reading just to show you that the pause button works. And when I'm done reading, I could just hit the done reading block. And you can see my list fills up with LOTR and 12 seconds. My reading time is reset to 0. My total reading time is at 12. So if I start a new book, I can click choose book. Let's just type in AAA for the new book. I could start reading. And let's say I stop after a couple of seconds, so I could just actually hit done reading and that'll also work. And you could see in my list that AAA got added, followed by 6 seconds. You'll notice that reading time is set to 1 because there's kind of a little bug here. And this bug happens because when I set currently reading to false, there's still a 1 second delay until the other block gets it and then stops counting up. But let me show you what happens if I go back to my original book. So if I go back to Lord of the Rings, LOTR, and hit enter, you'll notice that my total reading time is at 12, and I could start reading, and you can see my reading time's going up. I could pause it, and when I'm done, when I hit done reading, 5 seconds should be added to this item right here, the second item. And it goes up to 17. So it works. Let me just show you how to delete all books. I'm sure, so I'm going to type in yes, and everything gets cleared out. I hope you learned something from this video, and if you did, I would appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button below. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to get notified when I release more videos, and I will see you in the next one.